But, much like a lot of the 69 base endeavors, this is quite uncomfortable.
New for 96. With your hosts, Kevin McCauley and Chris Nguyen.
Let me know if at any point you want to.
You
That was much too gentle.
You gotta make the sound. I like the decanter. It's like, or the little crystal goblet.
Yeah.
Real sense of occasion.
It's very much the opposite of the last bottle-related story that I got to experience, which was the investor/owner of a bar I frequent.
Yes.
Running up to me excitedly, holding an empty bottle of Pappy Van Winkle.
Yeah.
And he's a wealthy guy, and he's like, "Look what I've got! Look what I've got!" And I was thinking, you can't be that excited. The bottle's empty, and you've definitely had this to drink before, right? And he's like, No. I got the bottle. I'm gonna take it home, fill it with Jim Beam, and feed it to all my friends. and my favorite thing about that was he thought that I would appreciate that statement most. Someone I occasionally run
you
into.
and me, we're the same. What you do
Yeah.
with people's cars, it's all the same.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like, what I do is take the empty shell
Fill it with
of a Fiero,
packing peanuts.
and usually I try and sell it as a Ford Transit because I think it's the best getaway vehicle of all time. But the chassis arrangement isn't all that easy.
Yeah. Well, I do that with him too. See, he thinks he's drinking Dasani, but I don't think so.
It's tap water, Sonny.
Oh yeah, that's some toxic stuff too. Since we're in Houston.
I like fluoride.
Yeah,
it's fine.
My beautiful wife was having a mini crisis the other day because we had like 3 days without rain in a row, or 3 days without substantial rain in a row for the first time in 40 odd years, I think. And she was worried about a little tadpole pond that is in the culvert under our driveway that they were going to dry out. And she was like, I'm just like, well, put some tap water in it. She's like, no, it's poison, it's toxic. You shouldn't be putting that in your tadpoles. And I'm sitting there drinking my glass of water going,
You know
you're
what?
the nutritionist.
That is actually true. So my mother has a koi pond with like 50 koi fish in it.
Really?
Yes, and there was a time. Excuse me. There was a time when so they have a housekeeper who minds the fish, and at one point she forgot to turn off. She was just kind of topping it off, and she forgot to turn off the faucet, and it cycled through all of the water and replaced it with just tap water. And apparently you can only do so much because there's chlorine, and it killed all of the fish. All 50 of them were just like floating at the top.
Oh, that sucks.
I don't think fluoride's great for them either. We're gonna
not.
get this is now the anti-vaxxer
But also, I mean,
conspiracy episode.
it's
Good
just
for their
it's also
teeth.
like water shock. Changing that much of their water to a
Yeah.
different temperature and a different chemical makeup is just like disruptive.
They
no matter
need
what it
a
is.
certain percentage of fecal matter in the water to maintain themselves. But the fluoride does make their teeth shiny. So there is that.
I would love to know if they actually have teeth, but they're always so shy, those koi.
They do. It's hard to have them crack a smile.
Yeah,
so,
they play it cool, don't they?
Oh,
They
God,
play it coy.
Don't fuck this.
well, Jordan, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah.
The door's that way.
Is this on?
This might be on.
Okay.
I don't know.
Should we introduce what this is, who this is?
What I ask myself that every single time we start recording.
How we
What is
fell into
this?
this
What are we
unfortunate
doing here
circumstance.
Yeah.
with this?
Well, this is new for 96.
This is
we have
new
a
for
special
96.
guest, Jordan, last name unpronounceable, the only man who has trained a wallaby to do a valve adjustment
That is true.
in this hemisphere, at least.
Yes.
Welcome.
Great to be on. The best thing about teaching a wallaby is you put your 10 mil socket in there. In this little pouch.
In the
Never
little
lose it again.
pouch. Yeah.
It's a trick.
The
It's
marsupial
why
guarantee.
Australian mechanics are the best, because we always have a 10 mil on hand in a wallaby.
Yeah, you never want to use the tools though. It does get a little bit mucusy in there, but that's how they keep their tools private, I
Yeah,
guess.
ask any Porsche tech. You need some mucus on the tool. to get
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Have you ever seen the videos of like a baby kangaroo? It looks like a little jelly bean,
No.
but kind of tastes like ants.
Like the baby kangaroo tastes like ants?
Sure, I don't know. I guess they do. But it looks like a tiny little jelly bean. It just meanders its way around the pouch.
Oh my god.
It's very gross.
Actually, that's very like alien-esque. I don't know if I like that. They're not as cute and fuzzy as I thought they might be. Like they literally, I thought that they might look like stuffed animals, but kangaroos up close,
Quite mangy.
they're very mangy.
Well, very mangy.
Yeah, and the pocket, very
You know,
gross.
just about anything that comes out of the bush in Australia is pretty mangy and wants to fight you.
Yeah, yeah.
Wanders into town, punches you in the face.
We're not gonna retranslate anything into American lingo here. We're just gonna let the double entendres stand as they are.
Yeah, we'll have extensive show notes.
Yes, indeed.
Please refer to.
I've
With
only
timestamps.
I've
Okay,
got-
this word we looked it up. Wikipedia says it means this.
Yeah, I've only got here on my notes here, dingo equals dog, and Paul Hogan equals prime minister. So that's all I've got.
Good old Paul Hogan. Tax dodge.
Is he? We get no celebrity news about him
I
anymore.
know.
Not since like 1988. But I guess is he still alive and well in Australia?
I wouldn't know where to start, but did you see our wedding website and what I did with it?
No.
So on our wedding website, for my wife and I, it had an about me, a story about how we met. And the real story's fine, I guess. We went out to a drink and had a good time. But for the wedding website, we wanted to kind of embellish it a little. So I went to Wikipedia and got the plot notes for Crocodile Dundee.
Oh my
I
God.
copied and pasted and then changed all the names.
Oh, that's perfect.
I thought I recognized your vows from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a little disconcerting when, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded knife? And you say, well, that's not a knife. That's my wife.
Oh my God.
you call that a wife?
You call that a wife?
My God.
Oh my God.
Congratulations on your wedding.
Yes, indeed.
Recently happened, but that's in the past. What matters is you bought yourself a wedding car
You did.
and you drove it here.
This was a wedding gift just to yourself.
Yes.
You were like, maybe something for her, but I don't think so.
Something borrowed, something 700 foot-pounds of torque.
Yes, and something that leaves my wallet black and blue.
Indeed.
So yeah, I've been looking for a solid 18 months for a W220, so a 2006 S65 AMG. Principally because it's cool.
What makes it cool?
Everything.
What makes it cool to the layperson that doesn't know that it's a V12 twin turbo sedan?
There's just I was having a discussion the other day with someone about how I think arguably it's more of a supercar than anything you see, with a wedge shape and a V12, naturally aspirated V12, crazy exhaust, that kind of thing. Because it is a regular car for all intents and purposes, but every single category is turned up to 11.
Yeah, this is definitely the mindset of if less is more, imagine how much more could be.
Yeah, and so I
Good
was
Fraser quote.
having a chat I was having a chat to someone at the wedding who actually picked the car up for me in Portland, and he's had a chance to drive all sorts of sports cars. Mine, taken for rides in the shop, and he's kind of like, cool, they're fun, they're interesting, but as someone who's not really interested in cars, he considers them a hobby, an accessory, maybe an asset, but, a passion that he doesn't have. When he picked up the Mercedes for me from the dealership, it's the only time where his wow. Because for him, what it was is exactly what he drives to work every day. Just, 200 mile an hour capable.
Yeah.
And insanely smooth and comfortable and completely quiet. Zero noise inside the car at all. No exhaust
It
noise,
is
which is disappointing.
Undisturbed and unbothered by just anything. It requires no effort. I'm assuming, I've not driven it yet, but I'm assuming it just requires no effort to accelerate.
No, not
It
at
is
all.
unencumbered by the laws of physics.
Yeah, and everything has a motor, and there is so much. There is so much. I don't think it's wood. I think it's eagle beak actually, and there is a mirror for every passenger. There's a mirror for every passenger, including the driver. I assume, of course, would have a mirror as well. But the rear seat passengers get all of the toys.
Now, thankfully, it's the classic 3-body trunk.
Yeah.
So I can put you and Kevin in the back of it, so you can see the mirror in
yeah,
the trunk.
it's air conditioned. That's how
look,
luxurious it is.
If you're going to be whacked by a boss who's driving one of these,
Yeah.
especially in period, it's the big boss, right? And so there's going to be some theater to it, and you want to make sure that your victim's looking his best. So you
Yeah.
bundle him in the back,
And
you
then
give his own little light.
You recline the rear seat back, the power
Yeah.
recline to crush them like a trash compactor, and
that
that gets
would
rid
be
of the bodies. Yeah. I would assume that it would have less trunk space because of all the back seat stuff, maybe.
Have you seen how long the car is?
It's pretty
It just
long.
keeps going.
It's like 32 feet.
I don't want to spend too much time imagining it, but I think it would be hilarious to be bundled into the trunk of one of these and try and escape. Because if you really want to see MacGyver, there's some pretty easy access panels to the pneumatic air compressor that controls all the door locks.
Oh.
and the trunk itself. It's all driven by air and
Wait,
airlines.
Why?
That's extremely Mercedes, and I had no idea
That's
that was the case.
that's how they do like the soft close
Oh,
doors. It's
yeah.
essentially air, and it controls the locks and things.
That is so. I don't know why. Like that sounds so German because I know the Japanese cars with their soft close, it is electronic. But that sounds especially Mercedes. I had no idea they were still using like was it vacuums and air.
Yeah, I need to probably like pull one of the door panels and kind of figure out exactly how it works. But
And
it's
then-
just limitless features and excessive engineering.
So what you're saying is that it will be extremely easy, even for a trained European car mechanic, to work on.
Yeah,
breeze.
it's no shortage of opportunities to pull your hair out.
I feel like you're gonna unscrew one screw and like everything will fall apart like a clown car.
In fact, the car is extremely well built to
Yeah.
the point where Mercedes often cover over interior trim pieces and hardware because they don't expect it to break, and so they didn't have any holes in the upholstery for it. And what you're supposed to do if you have to go specifically like airbags and steering wheels a lot of the time is you have to punch through the back of the leather. At a certain point, you feel for the depression, you find it, you punch through. And that's one of those things that you imagine, you take your S-Class in, it's a house-priced car, and you get it back, and there's holes in the leather. And that's one of these big challenges for techs to stress to the service advisor.
Yeah.
Like, I am punching a hole in their interior, and there is no fix for that other than replacing the wheel. And that's Mercedes' policy. It's just, that's it. And I imagine that would be all sorts of frustrating.
Yeah,
on
just
a dealer
slightly.
level.
And what was the original price?
So I think in today's dollars, I did a conversion. I forget what I converted it from, but in today's dollars, it's broadly a $250,000 to $275,000 car.
Okay.
Um,
So they do not make an S65 anymore, the current generation.
no, I think that engine, and it's the same engine,
Oh, really?
virtually unchanged from my variant up until 14, 15, 16, somewhere around there.
I forget what that model designation was, but that's the last S65 I could remember.
And it's the same. It's the same M275, and it was
Yeah.
in all the Maybachs and the S600. It's like a very, very rudimentary thing, and
Yeah.
it's for its monstrous torque and for all the horsepower. By today's standards, 100 horsepower a liter is nothing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they were trying to do. And it's single overhead cam, no variable cam timing, 3 valves per cylinder. So it's got essentially splayed rocker off the cam for the 2 intake valves and a singular exhaust. Pretty basic turbo operation. There's no variable turbine geometry, nothing. It's just, here's an extremely big engine in an extremely big car
Yeah.
with some regular sized tires.
It's extremely discreet. It has very regular sized tires, but it has extremely unique brakes.
And the wheels are amazing.
It does, and it's for me that this era of Mercedes-Benz it's when they really started making the S-Class the most safe and convenient and comfortable car. It's kind of where BMW broke off and started putting screens and options, and this doesn't really have any modes. It's just a couple of buttons.
The 7 Series had like the wiper arm would auto rotate so that it would lean on one side of the blade and alternate. And it's like, this doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, and it's engineering for the sake of engineering, but
Right.
Mercedes were really pathological about safety, but not necessarily. It was about adding safety convenient features.
Yeah.
So it's the first car that really had the radar cruise control. So the very first gen of Distronic. The active body control really helped keep the brakes working, that kind of thing. But it's still a car from 2006. So a lot of the things that you get on an entry-level sedan today, if anyone actually sells one, would be considered revolutionary tech, or was introduced on that S-Class, or maybe the model after or a model after. It's that trickle down.
Yeah.
And so they were still battling some pretty conventional tech.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the brakes, they're absolutely enormous. But it uses 4 brake pads per caliper in the front, so 8 total in the front.
That's insane.
And because they figured, look, having 2 smaller pads rather than 1 longer pad on the sweep of the rotor would help even out brake wear. It would help with refinement and little bits and pieces like that, because they felt that they needed more brake pad, but they didn't want to sacrifice, in the AMG version, they didn't want to sacrifice what you got out of the S600.
Yeah.
That kind of...
It really was like the whole the entire car really is an exercise of what if cost were no object, but actually.
Did AMG use like Brembo or a supplier like that, or did they use their own?
I believe it's Brembo's.
It should be
Probably
Brembo because
Brembo.
that's generally what the Germans have been using as a
Yeah.
supplier.
Well,
for
I always tell the anecdote, but Brembo makes the brakes so that it can stop from the top speed of the car.
Yeah.
Like in a certain distance. Like they have their own parameters. So this in a 200-mile-an-hour sedan, it has to be able to like overpower and stop from that. Like
up until the 992, which we all know they
Yeah.
failed on.
Okay,
so the S65 was cool. Is that this was like you said this is 2006, 2005?
2006. It was a
2006.
single model year only. The last year of the 220 platform. Production numbers worldwide were less than 1,000, way less than 1,000. I'm just not sure of the actual detail. And most of those, 2/3 or so, are in North America.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it really was AMG or Mercedes trying to put AMG right at the top of their product range.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the times they were skunkworks developments of established models, but not really in the forefront of Mercedes.
Yeah.
But when they came out with the 220 and the other platforms down, sort of in the late 90s to early 2000s, is when you had that 113K, the supercharged AMG engine, which they won a bunch of awards for. Then they came out with this, the M275, which they won a couple of awards
How much
for.
horsepower does it have?
It's from out of the box. It's
Yes.
604 horsepower and 740 pounds-foot of torque.
It's just crazy because you mean
Insane.
the V12 BMW 7 Series, it was like decidedly it was a V12 just for comfort. It was a V12 for refinement and like the best, but it was like 321 horsepower. I mean, it was unheard of. This was this
Wait, the
and
760?
like I don't know about the 760, but the E38
Oh,
had
yeah, yeah,
321 horsepower
Yeah.
out of the V12, and it's like I don't know how much they really pushed it beyond it. It might have gotten to like just under 400 or something, but to have 600 horsepower in a sedan, this was maybe the first of these cars where it's like we can just put a massive amount of power into a car and just it will go fast.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Wait.
enough brakes out there. There's enough tire out there to something can control this, But it's like before that, you kind of had like this is our fast car, this is our big car,
Yeah.
and the never to the two shall meet.
This
And-
does seem like, so in the horsepower war, like this really is, it goes beyond. It's like, okay, like no one is going to match this because I don't know what the closest competitor, I guess it would have been the 760 at the time.
or the S8 or something, but there
Or the
was no
S8, but
competitor.
I don't
I
know
don't
that
think
they
there
even
was an
came
S8 in
close.
2006, was there? Or did they start? Did Audi
they-
start really doing that early?
Yes, they would have had an S8 in that era, and we would have gotten it here, I believe. But I don't think, I mean, that would have been maybe an S63 competitor.
Maybe the Phaeton?
I don't think
But
it
still
made that much
wasn't
horsepower.
Fast,
Yeah.
Nothing
No,
was, there
no,
was
but
nothing
it
that
was-
It was
like,
just
fast.
it was just the W12 was an engineering spectacle more than it was, I guess, a power spectacle. But so this is kind of in its own class in a way.
For
but
sure.
more importantly, who is the man that signed your engine cover?
Ooh, Volker Haag.
Oh my God! Did you Google him?
I did.
Did you get a Hargon?
No, I got very turned off by the Mercedes forums and these
I thought you were saying his
arguments.
political views.
I don't think. I think this was a little. I think a lot of Germany's problems were before his time. But it did seem that there was a lot of argument on the AMG forums about who builds the fastest engine.
Oh my God! No, this sounds terrible.
It was not a good rabbit hole to fall down. And
And then you logged in, created an account, and replied in all caps.
Yeah.
I did, and I determined that my Hag is the best.
For sure, yeah. I think that's safe to say.
But yeah, it was cool to see another car pop up on Ring and Trailer a week after I got it, built by the same guy. Same spec, same mileage,
wonder
same
if
everything.
He built all of the S65s.
No, but I think
guess it
the
would've been a
engine
lot.
builders tended to specialize on an engine for runs and
Yeah.
series. But like I said, they only probably a disproportionate amount of the total production because of how few they were building. I mean, that motor
Yeah.
was in the S65, the SL65, and the CL65 over that era. Those three very low production.
I like to think
variants of the
that they're
car.
like, okay, so we need 2,000 of these engines. You've got a year. Go.
Yeah, exactly. What was the name on yours?
I don't remember actually. I should actually like record that at some
Check
point
the
in time.
tattoo.
Yeah, I gotta check the tattoo.
What was it?
I didn't even want to look at my at what the name was because I don't even have the carbon fiber engine cover like you do. So
Well,
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your other cars?
The 944.
Yes.
Which is soon to be my ex car.
S2.
The S2, 1989
don't
S2.
listen to the podcast where I talked about driving it.
Yes.
No. Yeah, so that one, we did a timing belt on it today, fired it back up, running better than ever.
Great.
Ready for you to shoot it sometime in the next week
Okay.
when it dries up. But that was a car that I've wanted since I was 14 and still love the model and what that car is and the place it has.
Yeah.
But never fell in love with exactly how it was out of the box.
Yeah.
And that car was just too nice to modify and cut up.
Yeah.
It's nice that you recognize, like, this is special, this is its own thing. If I want something different, I need something different. I'm not going to change this into being something it's not.
And so it's being sold to make way, in the stable
gas.
for the Mercedes.
Because it takes up so much room.
But for a number of reasons. My wife, she graduated college at the end of last year. And got a really good job with some good prospects working with Memorial Herman out in Cyprus. So that leaves her with a 30-odd mile commute each way, which makes our decision to buy our 100,000-mile Cayenne Turbo that I've since modified extensively.
To make it more or less reliable.
Is it more or less fast? Did you modify it to be slower?
I think it's more likely to break down substantially closer to a work or home now because of how quickly she can get there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's a great car, especially with 600 something horsepower now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We were just talking about these and how those are actually, it's a good deal performance-wise. I don't know about maintenance-wise, but considering that the GTSs are going for so much more, like the turbo for performance at least seems like a great deal.
I tend to recommend people buy the GTS for the ease of maintenance. The
Yeah.
GTS still has the same sort of air suspension issues and stuff like that, but the turbos are a lot of work, even for me. And so
Yeah.
broadly, that was a big factor of that is, she's working in a hospital now and actually has decent, proper responsibilities and a duty of care to make it to work. And, while I've taught her to drive a stick and she can drive a stick, she can drive a stick well enough to get me to the hospital and, the inevitable snake bite scenario. But she probably doesn't want to do that in traffic. So I wanted to pick up something else that was automatic and comfortable and easy to kind of eat up miles with. And so, if you've got one unreliable German super SUV, the way you really want to balance it out is another extremely unreliable.
Yeah, what you're saying is that naturally aspirated cars are vastly superior in terms of reliability. What you should do is actually get two, because the turbo is twin turbo.
It is indeed. So
a bi-turbo and a twin turbo.
It's beautiful.
More than one turbos is
so
the
we
ideal
have,
solution.
now parked outside our house, these two silver German vehicles that aren't that far apart in age, about 5 years apart.
Yep.
And what we've got 20 cylinders, 4 odd turbos, somewhere in the region of 12 to 1300 horsepower, and somewhere in the region of about 1500 foot-pounds of torque.
That's a lot of torques.
It's good, other than Mercedes is getting stuck because it still has an open differential and it's so heavy and has so much torque just from the get-go, even just kind of letting off the brake, that because of all the rain, it sinks into the ground and just one of the wheels spins. And that's really embarrassing because, maybe the original owner of that car could have called his staff to assist him. But I, buying the car on a 90% discount, 10 years later or 20 years later, do not have that staff.
Don't you actually have a staff where you could be like, Ian, come here?
Hey, you, come here a minute.
I promised that I would make fun of them tonight. And yes, I do. They're on my beck and call.
Did we actually introduce what Jordan does? Because this is the
no,
first
I think
time
we were talking. I don't know if it made it on when we talked about the wacky waving inflatable tube man, but that's what he does.
That is true. Yeah.
I am a purveyor of illicit contraband.
So why don't we do this? This will be. Let's splice this in at the beginning,
Okay.
or not, or we just keep it going. By the way, yeah. So our intro has been 40 minutes long, and Jordan owns, of course, a Porsche specialist
3-time
shop.
guest, 4 if you count the worst episode of this show ever.
That is true. When we had like 8 guests on at once, and like 1 mic. But Jordan, you own Modern Air-Cooled, established when?
So December 2015.
Okay. Ooh, 6 years.
I mean, yeah, we're getting on. We're almost old enough to drink now.
Yeah. No kidding.
The stress of the
in
corporate
Australia.
life.
In Australia, the drinking age is 6. Yeah, and soon to be relocated from the Houston Heights to Washington corridor.
Yeah, so in the downtown end of Washington Ave, right behind Catalina Coffee, which is an incredibly prominent spot as far as car culture of this town.
Look for the wacky waving inflatable too, man.
Look for the wacky inflatable man.
He just had one delivered, folks. He actually did.
And 3 delivered.
Yeah. And anyways, so we were talking about your cars. So you're selling the S2.
I'm selling the S2 to make way for the Mercedes, and as I said, it's to have a second easy, good mile eater on the road,
Yep.
or a good consumer of gas. And also, I just missed having a fast car. So ever since I sold my 996 Turbo S, I've had the 993, I've had the S2, a Miata, good fun cars to drive around, but I miss having a fast car.
Yeah.
And, that is the party piece of the S65.
Yep.
It's an amazing limousine
Yeah.
that then shocks you with its pace, right?
Yeah, and that's just the thing about these these modern AMGs is that the acceleration is so brutal that it's you don't need a manual. I mean, they don't come in a manual anyways, but you don't need a manual. It is just genuinely fast.
It's interesting because your car has a much more sophisticated gearbox than mine.
Yeah.
I'm a very classic 5-speed auto torque converter.
Yep.
Slush box. I mean, the whole.
Same thing that's found in the just even normal 220s.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the SLR?
Probably the SLR. Yeah, it's a different version of the same box. I mean, obviously they're AMG sort of specific valve bodies and programming and some pieces, but this was the very end of the 220 when they had the 7-speed box and they really wanted to be able to put it in things, but they weren't sure that it would hold up to the power.
Yeah.
Because it was. I mean, that amount of torque being put through a car with a warranty, and refined, it was trailblazing back then.
Yeah.
Your car with its gearbox, with the wet clutch arrangement is much sharper and more precise.
Yeah.
And your boost response is a lot better as well. And so I do enjoy some of the laziness and the boost lag in the S65. It's a refreshing reminder of that old turbo tech that I loved about my 996 Turbo, which we've had extensive discussions about my opinion on why the 996 Turbo is so much better than the 997 because of how much it reminds you of what it is and kind of the limitations of that era, the mid 2000s before we started getting into extremely fancy tech.
Yeah. And I would say I would almost think that my transmission is kind of transitional as they were kind of sorting that out, because I think the 9-speed MCT speed shift is better. Although I've heard it's still not quite as smooth as it could be, and it's nowhere close to like a PDK or a DCT or a DSG. But it doesn't matter. It's not a dual clutch anyways. Or is it? Actually, I don't know if the next generation is. I don't think it is.
I'm not really abreast of the newer ones, but
yeah,
when it comes to your version of the box, it's an interesting design decision not to have a torque converter.
Yeah.
I mean, there are obvious compromises to having a torque converter, but there are some really good ease of use aspects to it.
So you can have like race start, say for instance, with the wet clutch pack, but then the trade-off is that it's kind of rough to engage, and that's it's an interesting trade-off because it's installed in a lot of luxury-oriented cars.
I will say there's a reason why every single drag car uses a torque converter.
Yeah.
It's the fastest way to get going.
Yeah.
We're of an era of car enthusiasm when we were younger that we would read in all the magazines the acceleration figures for the manual and the automatic. And the automatic would be 2, 3, or tenths of a second slower to 60.
Yeah.
And usually about a second and a half slower in the quarter mile. And it was a big difference. And that was really down to a fundamental lack of understanding on how to keep the gearbox together while still being comfortable in the shift and still being quick in the shift. But that really changed. I think the Tiptronic 997 Turbo might have been close to the manual or extremely close to the manual.
Oh, really?
I think that might have been right around the tipping point for Porsche, and then obviously they stopped with the tip, went to PDK, where it's like, no, street's ahead.
Yeah.
But as far as drag racing is concerned, and that absolute, leaving the line, the torque multiplication effect of a torque converter is gold.
Yeah.
Absolute gold. And so I do really enjoy that whiplash feeling. And you do experience it in the S65, and a lot more than, your version of the gearbox. I've driven mostly in C63s. And it's good. It's good, but you're right. It's not PDK, and it's not, something nostalgic.
Yeah.
It was an interesting decision.
Yeah. It's a little in between.
It's
but
like,
yeah.
I mean, like any of these transitional things, like they thought this might be the way.
Right.
They thought this might be the way for the next 20 years, and it turned out to be the way for the next 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like SMG or any of these. Do you want to talk about your 993? You said that it's falling apart because you haven't driven it.
Yeah, so the 993 is a bit of a pandemic special now, in that it's sick. I put 2 tanks of fuel in it last year.
You didn't give it the Australian tune-up?
No, I did not.
Oh my God.
There's only so much beer you can spill in your carpet before you get pulled over.
Yeah, well, I thought the Australian tune-up was skidding it upside down, which would have actually cleaned out the beer.
It's actually just converting it into a ute.
Yeah, yeah.
And then carrying beer
very
around.
tricky with the rear engine layout.
No, I put 2 tanks of fuel in it last year. That was it. And if there's one thing an old 911 loves, it's sitting.
Yep.
And so it's. I have some lofty aspirations to, as a birthday present to myself, to strip the car, pull a lot of the interior out, drop the engine out, and start doing the restoration that I planned.
Yeah.
Hoping to have it off to the body shop by December. I had some really interesting ideas for what I wanted to do as kind of a shop showcase. But unfortunately, certain life goals have tempered that enthusiasm to hot rod it, and also the resurgence of bubble era 993 pricing has scared me from
and it's
kind of building what I want it to be.
It's a 96.
96, so it's an OBD2 very Ram car,
New
arena
Ford.
red on grey. I love the thing, but it's very ratty at this stage.
So if what you're leading to is asking us to turn it into an art car, then we're all in. I think we can.
New for 96 logos. Imagine it.
Yes.
All over the car.
All over. Hand painted.
Interesting.
Yeah. It'll be digital.
There's
it'll be
a-
digitally represented from the hand.
A
paint.
look of
I-
fear in his face because he knows it will break in and do it anyways.
Well,
even
but
if it's now.
as a Porsche classic, a nod to certain heritage. As long as I get a fuel filler flap with your faces on it.
Yes. Yes.
And then I want one of those, those little waving lasers that you can write messages in, and the
Yeah.
arm swings back and forth.
Yeah.
So we can do corporate sponsorships.
You gonna put that on the roof?
Yeah, New for 96 sponsored by AutoZone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's a fitting.
I think that would work actually.
Yeah.
So okay. So where is it sitting now? It's just in the shop?
I haven't seen the car since my wedding.
Okay.
I think I still own it.
Yes, it's possible.
I needed some room, so I parked it at one of my very dear friend Rob's houses.
Yeah.
I was helping him move in. He had a 2-car garage, and he's only got 1 car. Well, he's got 2 cars. I have one of his cars, the Aston Martin that we're repairing for him.
Yeah.
But what we were really trying to do is make an impression of smugness to his neighbors. He bought a new townhome opposite the shop, actually, on 19th Street. And so we're filling the garage, with old 911s.
Yep.
Just so they get an idea that he's, a successful and well-adjusted
Better
human.
than they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're filling your garage up with nightclub owner specials, which I think of any AMG as like a nightclub enthusiast choice of car.
I don't know how you phrase that, but or exactly that way, because we currently have on the lift an S-Class Coupe Night Edition. I didn't know they did that.
Wow.
It's an S550 with the matte gray and it's a Porsche client of ours. It's his daily driver.
Yeah.
And you have to do some basic service to it. And,
Yeah.
That's an interesting car. The S-Class Coupe is a confused and interesting beast.
I really like it. It's so opulent in size, and like it's an object that doesn't need to exist, but I just like what it is. So you said it was a 550?
It's a 550.
It's the so that'd be a 4-liter now, right? Or is it a 4.7?
No. It's still, I don't know which year this one is. When I say it's a new one, it's probably 5 or 6 years old.
Current gen,
So it's
current style.
a
I
standard.
think.
It's a standard version of your engine.
Yeah.
It's a non-AMG.
We just confused
turbo
each other the other day because the 212. So in 2012, the 212 went to all downsized engines, including the 550, which was a 5.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, I think, before, and then it went to a 4.7 bi-turbo, and it was actually kind of impressive. Like I forget what the power numbers were, but like it might have rivaled like. Actually, I'm going to misstate a lot of facts here because I literally just read this yesterday, but now I don't recall any of them. But it was like 0 to 60 in just a tick over 4 seconds, which for the 550 seems extremely impressive. So I didn't know if they were still doing, if they continued to on the downsizing path with those.
I think a lot of those performance increases came from when they standardized all drive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was some of that driveline stuff that we talked about with the better and more responsive gearboxes. Because that was the thing, like Australia for the longest time was the only place in the world where you could get the full AMG S trim in rear-wheel drive because of the right-hand steering and we're the largest per capita consumers of AMG products as far as Mercedes-Benz.
That fits.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's every cashed up bogan. It's how do you the Australian car industry is barely
ute
holding
with
on.
class.
Yep.
And you can't buy a Ute anymore. You can't buy your Commodore anymore.
There's no Utes.
No more Utes.
Not a one?
No, it's the closest thing's a Hilux.
Oh my God.
This is some bullshit.
It is bullshit.
Hey, we've got lightning round questions.
We're doing that.
We're doing that. Are you ready?
I gotta be.
I had to cut this
It's a
off.
lightning round.
Okay. I have just a couple questions. You're just going to answer these very shortly.
True.
One like that. What's the best American car on sale?
It's on Bring a Trailer and it's a Thunderbird SC.
Manual?
Surely it would have to be.
Oh my God.
There's got to be one there somewhere.
Name one current Japanese electric car.
Does Nissan still make the Leaf?
They
Yes.
do.
There we go.
All right, what is the worst 911 generation?
Oh shit. I reckon. Or everyone's gonna hate me because most people like the 997.1.
Ooh, actually, I was thinking that in my head too, even though that's the one that I'd probably buy, but just because
It's an amazing car. It's an amazing car. I don't think it's aging well.
it's
I
just
think
the most boring.
I think it's in the shadow. It's in the shadow of the most futuristic 911 they tried to make, the 996, which is now having a renaissance in interest and value.
is.
And there was always that undercurrent, but I think the 997.2 was amazing. It was a really good car, and
Engine was great.
Yeah, and they're interesting because they're so rare because of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right? And then the 991 is it's great. It's
Yeah.
a really wonderful daily driver.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that because my thoughts were that exactly when that question came up. Anyways, this is a lightning round. It's not
Yeah, it's
for me,
lightning
so-
round. I'm asking Jordan, who
Slow
are our guest.
lightning. Go.
Not Chris. What's the best SUV coupe?
Oh shit! The only one I've ever driven is the GL63S or the GLE.
Ugh, okay.
It's the only one I've ever driven. It's the only SUV coupe
Well, I mean,
I've
just
actually ever
visually,
driven.
in philosophically, are any of them? What is
No,
the best?
they're all bad.
Okay, all right. What Corvette would you have? Of any Corvette generation, not specific cars, just generation.
I actually do really like the classic split window Corvette.
Oh yeah.
Oh
that's
yeah.
fucking great.
But
too.
my standard answer for anything muscle car related is 68 to 72.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
And the best version of a Corvette's the Viper.
The Viper was supposed to be the best version of the Cobra.
Yeah, I don't like Cobras much.
Okay. Well, what was the last car sold in America that had we're talking like front engine car, okay, no shenanigans, with a forward hinged hood?
As in from an American manufacturer?
No,
or
just sold here. Last car sold here. Most recent car that was sold with a forward hinge hood.
not like an E34 or BMW?
No.
I have no idea.
I don't actually know.
What?
I think I have a hunch it was the SLR McLaren.
Oh, well, no, you said no funny business.
I said no funny business, meaning like some rear engine car and some bullshit. And like, oh, well, if you're looking at the car backwards, the rear hood tilts forward.
No, I'm not buying it. That one's a weird car.
That's That's the right answer.
If you can't jack it up with a jack,
What?
it doesn't count. You'll crack the car in half.
Okay.
You
All
have
right.
to.
Well, that was the last of my questions. So we're gonna dive into this topic. So tell me about cracking an SLR.
So it was one of not the earliest. I mean, Lamborghini really pioneered with Pagani's help as a consultant the kind of carbon fiber tub for street uses and this composite.
Lamborghini didn't do that.
No, they really did. If you dive into it, they did a lot of.
But they didn't produce any of it.
They did in some special design studies, but that was a big thing that kind of got Pagani started in the automotive industry.
Right.
As a
Horacio Pagani started at Lamborghini.
Yeah, a composite specialist in that kind of development. Obviously, in Formula One, they were doing it for years, and in aerospace, they were doing it for years earlier. But the SLR McLaren really was Mercedes trying to join in the frenzy of the very first kind of hypercars of that, 2004,
Right,
5, and 6. We
Yeah.
the Carrera GT.
Sure.
The really good for like the Challenge Stradales from there.
It was the Enzo, the Carrera GT, and the SLR.
Yeah.
They all hit at the same time, and they all, in like a weird hypothetical sense,
Yeah.
could somewhat sort of hit the same lap time.
But one of the big concerns with the SLR is it was built like a bespoke race car, as far as the carbon fiber tub, and while it was reinforced, it was still in that kind of infancy of stiffness and design and usability and accessibility to that kind of technology. And so the big thing with those is you have to lift them with special tools and special pads completely evenly.
Yeah.
And with the cradle, much like the Carrera GT, it's the same. You have to bolt it to the lift or it'll fall off.
Wow.
And that was very much... This is why we've had this conversation recently. I more and more am refining this belief that 1995 to kind of 2005 is like the best decade of cars. And these cars are the very end of that, bleeding into 2006 and 7 in some cases. But this is when they were building cars with that level of performance. But it was the last of them that had that level of performance and was still extremely risky and dangerous to own.
Well, it was also
maintain.
some of the last cars that had like the feel. You know what I mean? Like an M5, from that era, like it still drove like a car, but it was just fast, and you had feel. Like you lose that later on. Things got number.
There's an argument to be made that a Huracan is not an exotic car. The tech in it isn't complicated or rare or exotic anymore. They've done a great job making it feel extremely special, but fundamentally, it's a dual clutch gearbox. We've got those in everything now.
Yeah.
It's got some carbon fiber. Yeah, I've got a carbon fiber engine cover, and some of us are jealous about that. And a lot of this stuff has become much more mainstream. But the cars like the SLR and in the mid 2000s were still extremely exotic and built by extremely small teams of people out of tech that nothing else really had at the time.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is the Huracan is the people's exotic car.
I think so. I see more Huracans than R8 V10s, that's for sure.
They did make a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I do like them though.
The R8 V10? Yeah,
Both that and the Huracan. It's a really fun
I like the
car.
Huracan too, but Kevin
I
hates
just
it.
think it's so boring. Like I just don't think there's anything interesting
Because he hates
about
the
it.
people.
It's
a car for the people.
That's why. Back to the SLR. Have you raised any of them? I don't want to say jacked.
I've never had a particular chance to work on them. We have a mutual friend that has expressed interest in finding one, and there's some subtle discussions about it. And I think maybe I didn't discourage him, but maybe turned down the enthusiasm a bit because he was like, "You'd work on it, right?" I'm like, "No." Just because it's not worth the liability for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was after that conversation I saw 4 of them in a 2-week span.
Oh wow.
The way that is when someone brings it to your attention and you find it on a Houston road.
So you went to Mercedes school.
Yeah.
So the people who then got education on the SLR, were they considered the nerds?
So the way Mercedes has an incredibly in-depth and complicated internal training scheme. It's all essentially online, and you go through these guided courses with essentially what I'm sure students were doing last year. Basically, you go through the material, and then you get these quizzes on the chapter immediately that's timed, no way backing out. You just do it. It's like, you went through this, do the quiz. And then at the end of it, they do a broader quiz of the entire subject matter. And there are thousands of them. And so when I was in the Mercedes-Benz school, it was a private college teaching Mercedes-Benz stuff and like in the accredited sense, but we were doing both the school's examination kind of methods and we were doing these internal Mercedes-Benz certifications. And those internal Mercedes-Benz certifications exist in not an employee number, but a registered number to my person anywhere in the world. They're worldwide, which is not something you can say for most manufacturers.
Yeah.
And some of them are really difficult. And in fact, the ones that are really, really tough are generally the more common models that are of the beginning of a new generation. So the W204, so the C-Class that was released in, I think, 8 or 9, about there.
Yeah.
Really, it was when they started doing that whole new design styling and a lot more integrated networking in the cars with the modules and how they did it all. That was by far and away the hardest automotive course I ever had to study.
Yeah.
It was that platform.
Because they were doing like most and like other it was fiber optic stuff. Which would you have to learn how to work on? I guess you would.
Mercedes they want you to understand the theory of operation. When it came to stuff like the most networks, if it's broken, replace it.
Yeah.
It's a fiber optic. It's don't crimp it. Don't lean on it. Don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Don't even think about it. And when I think we're from the 211 and some of the earlier bigger bodied cars that were more expensive that maybe had most networks. I think like my car, the 220 as well, had fiber optic audio. Yeah. When we got into the W204 and things like that, they started using fiber optic for more CAN bus and more, networking operations, and they expanded some of that stuff, and that's why those tests were so difficult. Yeah. And so when it came, we had a certain amount of coursework and certain courses that are key prerequisites to kind of be, Mercedes-Benz certified. So I was working through those, but if we kind of finished quickly, we had extra time. We were able to go into Mercedes Network and study anything. Yeah, absolutely anything. So I ended up doing a bunch of AMG courses. Ooh. And the AMG ones, and some of the V12 stuff, some of the SLR stuff, some of the AMG GT stuff. Even there was a small information packet course that wasn't fully certified, but for Pagani and what they were doing with the Huayra. Yeah. And I could just click through in my free time and do it. Kind of whatever I wanted, my own pace. And the thing with the AMG stuff, and especially like the SLR, is it was a standard established drivetrain and an engine. It's just a different body. So basically what the course for the SLR to be certified is safety stuff, how to lift it. Yeah. Because they basically said, oh, we got this carbon tub, don't touch it. And moved on, right? It's when they did these big platform changes that Mercedes is really hard to get certified on.
Is the Huayra motor related to this one?
It's the same engine.
Same engine? Wow.
They substantially changed a lot of what is the big bugbear for that motor amongst drag races is opening up the intakes. Mm-hmm. I think once people start tuning and chipping and freeing up the exhaust very quickly, the turbos run out of air. And that's a whole problem that Pagani is able to rectify, because Mercedes still build cars with service in mind and making things accessible and consistent. And every Mercedes-Benz model of a generation, regardless of the engine size, configuration, basic design, all the core components are in the same place. Yeah. The ABS is always, right there kind of in front of the driver. There's always a battery jump point. There's always, the coolant reservoir on one side. I mean, from the SLs to a C-Class. They do it consistently. Whereas obviously Pagani, taking that platform, can do whatever he wants. Right. And free up a lot of the constraints of packaging that Mercedes had.
And also the money constraints.
Yeah. So was there a yearbook of AMG engine builders?
So from what I skimmed through on the dumpster fire of the forum about which engine builder was best, I think there's an AMG owner's private lobby in one of the
sounds
forums,
terrible.
or with Mercedes. Mercedes has like an AMG owners club, where they have profiles of the engine builders on there.
I was hoping there'd be like an
Yeah, I
it
want
sounds
a
weird.
literal yearbook or
A
like
yearbook where it's
a-
like have a cool summer, Klaus.
like fraternity like group photo thing
Yeah.
or something, but it's all the AMG
Yeah, the
guys.
cool builders and the dorky ones.
Okay, so I'd be remiss if we didn't get to talk about Modern Air-Cooled.
Yes.
The stuff we've worked on, because I wanted to go over that, and before we go back to the SLR, which we will go back to. But you and I, Jordan, have been working on doing some emails and doing some creative story stuff and sharing information and stories and just interesting things. You come up with ideas, or I have an idea, and we make something and put it out there, and we did logo redesign, and your website is almost done.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've really struggled with for the last couple of years, like 2019 was a bit of a rough transitional year for us in the shop anyway. We're trying to figure out some things, and now that we're a few years in, what can we do better, or what kind of jobs should we not be doing? And then we were kind of making certain changes, and then we get to 2020, which is not really a year that went to plan for most people.
Yeah.
And so
What happened?
Okay.
So yeah, when a man loves a pangolin very much. No, so obviously 2020 was a radically different year than we were forecasting, and it bucked trends, and we did, like a lot of people in our industry, have a significant drop off in business early in the year, and then kind of clawed it back as it went along. But that kind of interrupted a lot of what we were trying to do, and so it's now felt like for the last kind of 18 to 24 months, we've been a little aimless in our messaging and the direction we're going, right? And so something that I really trying to do is we're moving into a new shop. It's gonna be much more professional, smaller, right there by Catalina, fully air conditioned. It's gonna be a beautiful place to work, and it is a very pretty building. And part of that is really stepping up our game in terms of messaging and marketing and what we're doing. And so, while Kevin alluded to this briefly to cut me off at the knees, I don't feel like I have much of an imagination when it comes to that. And the catalyst that makes us work really well together is Kevin has tons of ideas and tons of technical ability to bring a vision to life. And he also has a ton of questions. And what we found very quickly, we built a rapport where he'll be walking along and go, hey, what's this? Or, oh, look at that. And then just kind of expect me to elaborate on it.
And then that becomes the germ of an idea of like, let's explain this and make this into like a tech thing.
I actually liked your old promotional pens when you clicked it and all of your clothes came off. So
yeah. I like that. The nice thing about that, I don't know if you ever got that far, but if you actually sign the consent form with that pen,
Jeffrey Epstein pops out.
Oh, Jesus! I was say you own me. But yeah, it's Kevin, we haven't really spoken about how 2020 affected what you were doing with your kind of graphic design and journalism and that kind of stuff. But
yeah, you never asked.
I never asked. I used you to my own nefarious means. But yeah, we really had this opportunity to spend a lot more time together in the shop and bringing some of Kevin's ideas to life and teach him a lot more about the cars that we're working on. And so because of all of that, we started bringing up these ideas of revamping the concept of the shop and what we want it to be and presenting it properly. And that's been really fun.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate thing. But yeah, you have lots of ideas about things, or it'll be something staring me right in the face that I'll have been talking to you about just as an unrelated thing, just as like a personal thing. Like I'll be obsessing over some detail and you'll be like, hey, we could do a story about this. Like we could do an email about this. I'm like, oh yeah. But
it's true. And
yeah, it's been enjoyable.
People should like and subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah, they should like and subscribe to the newsletter. Be sure to watch
They're
the
very
newsletter.
aesthetic. They have many capturing the machine-like photos on there.
Yeah. And then when the website goes live, they'll all be on a blog, so we'll be able to share them in a more shareable format. And yeah, but there's a lot of good things ahead.
Which leads to maybe the listeners can write in, because they always have to.
Yeah.
There needs to be one contentious topic for feedback, which is on the matter of cookie cutter wheels on 911s.
They're great.
Yeah.
I'm a listener.
They're good.
And
Oh,
writing
I
it.
am outnumbered here.
I can't believe you don't like them.
But you like mine on mine, right?
Yep.
Mine's different,
Well,
right?
he has to say. He has to say that. You
No,
guys
and
are
I do really like. I like the wheel design. I like the wheel design, and we had a fairly animated discussion about where it is and is not appropriate.
So
Yes.
your thoughts are that they aren't appropriate on a car.
So there's a particular car we have in the shop that
Oh, let's talk about what a cookie cutter is real briefly. It's a 15-inch wheel. It was the base wheel on the 911, but in like the 70s and early 80s, but no one ordered it. Like basically the dealers said
It was
all these cars are
in
getting
the US.
Yeah, in
There were-
the US.
yeah.
In Europe, if you look at a base model 911 in Europe, it might have cookie cutters, and it's just these like small 15-inch wheels. It's a very it was made by ATS, but it's a very like I think of it as like an Italian wheel looking design because it's very sharp and it's cool.
Yeah,
So
it actually
I
looks more like a racing wheel.
I could see a lot of like Zagato-bodied Alphas with something similar.
Yeah, or even just like Alphas or Lancias or something like especially in the gold.
It's very
like on
dimensional.
mine.
It's dished and dimensional spokes, which is the cool part to it. But they're good on a base spec type car, I think.
See, I think they should be on a 70s 911S in a funky color. It
Yeah.
really does well.
Like the
If
one
it's-
Rudy had that was like the mint.
And if it's gonna be on a 911, it's got to be a 70s car in a funky color. I also think it looks.
technically 79.
Yeah, well,
I
technically.
straddle. I own 80s and 70s. I straddle 2 decades
And
because
there
of
you
my
go.
September 79 build date.
selectionally ageist. No, and then I think it works really well on the transaxle cars, the 944s and some of the 924s.
Ooh, yeah, they do look
and
good
things.
on
They
that.
look
They look good on that,
fantastic
but-
with that kind of sharper lines.
But all the first ones I saw were like on Steph's like Lemon's car,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like castaways, like throwaways, where it was like basically the silver, like it was basically the Fuchs paint job, the Fuchs
yeah.
finish.
Oh no, I'm not into that.
On a cookie cutter where it's got a black center and a silver lip, and so I don't like that on them.
Yeah.
So a lot of this discussion stems from an idea I had for a title of one of the newsletters about a particular hot rod that we have. It is, and I say this at full disclaimer, it's a beautiful car
I
done
love this
extremely
car.
well. It's a silver.
marry this car.
Yeah, it's
I
a
would
silver
marry.
73.5 911T that's been properly hot rodded. It's got sport seats. It's got a built 2.7 on carbs. It's been
Oh,
done
yeah.
well.
I've seen
It's got
that
the
one.
right
Yeah, it looks
shifter.
good.
But it's got these cookie cutters, these big sticky wheels. And Kevin shot it. And what title did you put on it in the end? No, we actually
We made the thing about the cookie cutters.
cookie
We didn't
cutters.
do a thing about the car.
Yeah, and I call it the cookie cutter 911.
Yeah, you said it's all a bit cookie cutter, isn't it? Because I mean, it was short of having the Pegasus,
Yeah.
Noble Pegasus on the
Yeah,
wing,
it had all the highlights.
It had all of the other, like every other sticker you could imagine that would be in that starter pack.
Yeah.
It's the car. It's the early 911. It's the long hood 911 that when I flick through the Luftgekühlt book, I see on every single page,
Yeah.
yeah.
down to the prototypo and
Yeah, you said
the
it's, all,
works.
it's a bit cookie cutter, and I was like, no, damn you, I love this car.
And I think
But
I'm frustrated
you were
by
not
how
wrong.
well-rounded the package is.
It is a well-rounded package, but it would be. I agree. It would seem more focused if it didn't have little accoutrements that seem very. I don't know.
I
Two
prefer,
on the nose.
Yeah, it's
I
a
prefer an
hat on a
anti-hero.
hat. Unka Pachka.
Yeah, I prefer an anti-hero. I want it to be running on 5 cylinders, but still faster.
Well, that
Than
is
the car next
certainly
to
a
it.
way to go. Yes.
Yeah.
Slightly broken, but better.
I like that. I mean, that's how I feel a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Not particularly functional, but still smug.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
But so the web address.
What?
What is
the
the web
newsletter?
address? No, web address
for
for your
the
website.
website?
For the website, it's just going to be modernaircooled.com.
Yep. Where I
Can-
assume that you can sign on to the newsletter.
We will have that functionality.
If you enjoy spam, which I do with eggs,
think- yeah.
toast, sign up for the newsletter and Modern Air-Cooled on Instagram, I believe.
Speaking of eggs and toast,
Yes.
do Australians put beans on toast?
No.
Where did you get this
mean,
idea?
Laura told me this.
This is
and
terribly
she's like, you
racist.
need to ask Jordan about this.
No,
I was like, I see
okay.
Jordan all the time. You never tell me this. She's like, well, if you're recording a pod, ask him this. I said, okay.
They put Vegemite.
I know.
on everything.
That's what I said.
So no, beans on
I said
beans
they
on
put dingoes
toast.
on
Beans
it.
on
I think
toast
it's
is
actually
much more of an English thing.
Really?
Yeah, but Australians will do it too.
Oh my
Okay, do they
god.
put
if
the
you're-
dingo right on the toast?
No. So
Use the mucus from the
kangaroo mucus.
marsupials?
They call it jam.
Um,
Marmalade.
I mean, what? America, you put egg in your beef to kind of bind a burger patty. When we grind up the kangaroo, it's inbuilt.
Again,
Oh,
we're
there
not
you
going
go.
to clarify the double entendres that may or may not be going on.
No, so baked beans are, something that I grew up and then people were like, oh, it's an Australian thing, and then you realize that no, it's very much an English thing, and then you get here and you get to Texas, like beans and chili and all that. I'm like, well, I guess it's an American thing too, and very quickly you realize beans, the musical fruit.
I absolutely
The more you
abhor
eat, the entire world toots.
beans do not belong in chili. I'm sorry. I know that might be sacrilege to some, but I just cannot. Like it messes with the texture. Beans are fine, I guess. If they're refried, they're great because they have no texture.
Grease pudding.
Yeah, it's basically bean marmalade.
Yeah.
Bean jam.
I went to the original Ninfas the other day
Yes.
for the first time. And Houston institution basically acknowledged with bringing the fajita kind of concept
it's,
to the masses. It's like their thing.
Founding mother of Tex-Mex
Yeah.
of sorts. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's a bunch of restaurants in that category that I do really like Spanish Flowers and Teotihuacan and places like that. More and more, I find myself ordering platters of food and just eating the rice and the refried beans
Really?
because it's good.
It is good.
Very good.
By the time, because you sit down, you order, and there's your chips and salsa, and you go through 3 margaritas that are spiked with Everclear.
Yep.
At that point,
You're ready to record a new for next
Yeah.
6
Wait,
months.
okay,
I don't want to chew on anything. It's just
Is that basic? Wait, what? Wait, rewind. A margarita spiked with Everclear? Is this a special order?
I think Tony's in particular, right near the shop, is they do a large like Supreme margarita that's like limit 1.
Okay. Okay. Actually, so I used to work off of 23rd, right by where Modern Air-Cooled is currently, and a coworker and I went out after work, and it's the only time I had ever thrown up at a restaurant after having a margarita.
In the
because it
restaurant?
was so strong. Yes, I went to the bathroom, but it was terrible. Anyways,
So I have, and maybe we can upload this somewhere at some point when I find it. I have a picture of Harris, my office manager, who has what is a beautifully beat to shit 95 993 X race car that he started putting back together. But it's from a couple of years ago. I think it was on Cinco de Mayo a couple of years ago. And we went to Tony's for lunch. And so this is an old race car that had been rolled over a couple of times, and they, put a new roof on it.
yeah.
But they just didn't have a sunroof or any attachment, so there's just a hole there, or the sunroof just kind of sat there on top of the cage. And then I got a beautiful photo of him sitting in the car with a sombrero with just the tip coming out the top of the sunroof at the 993.
I think we're treading into stories that we need to keep off the pod.
It's hard to say.
I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we should call this an ep.
Yeah, I
Continue this.
think so. Jordan,
Off mic.
thanks for joining, of course, once again.
Thanks for being on here. Do you have anything to promote? You sent the website out. Do you want to put out anything else?
I would like to spruik my greatest and best minion, Kevin, who's been working very well with and for me
Yes.
recently. And then, no, but I really do want to spruik the efforts that he's been making on our behalf, to kind of produce a better, stronger, and kind of more forward-focusing vision of what Modern Air-Cooled should be.
Yeah.
And I'm extremely excited to be in that new space. I mean, one of the things that is a big goal for this year is to get into that intersection behind Catalina, and we've got my shop, we've got a really car-friendly coffee shop there, and a really kind of car and motorcycle friendly clothing shop, all.
And you'll have the wacky waving inflatable tube man
We
right
will.
in the center.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the goal for the year is to really kind of build that into a destination, and that's something that Kevin and I really share a vision of. Is how do we bring, our idea of what a cool, welcoming, interesting space, on an even broader sense than just locally.
Sure.
And how can we kind of make that happen? So
Yeah, we want to be a destination. The car. If you're into these cars, if you're passing through Houston, this is where
I
you
agree.
go.
This is like, if you were in LA and you were stopping by like a Deus or something. Like this
Yeah,
has
yeah,
the same
totally.
spirit.
And,
of
and that's something that, and so, the more people that are kind of able to kind of see what the content we're producing, I'll say to you, if you come across it, come by, like visit, we'll show you around, we'll give you the tour, that kind of thing. And we're really trying to foster and promote a community and kind of get that going there. So I'm excited for the year.
Well, once you fully launch the new branding, give me the extra boxes of the naked pens, and I'll make good use of those.
And I don't know if Spruik is a compliment, but if it is, I'll take it.
Yep. Spruik is Spruik not an American thing?
Oh my no.
I have no idea what that is.
So
Oh no.
when a mummy emu loves a daddy emu very much,
Oh dear God.
they create many more emus, and they
Okay.
declare war on the government.
Play the rollout music.
Yeah. Cue the music.
Cue the music.
Anyways, thanks for listening. Do follow us on the Instagram at New496, Twitter all the same, and email us if you must at New496, all spelled out at
All
Gmail.
spelled out at
So
Gmail.
thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Good morning.